I was excited because you have a way of expansion of understanding. Like you're okay sitting in not either or the equation, which is why I say no a lot, because people just want the equation for the gift economy and make that work for their business. And I don't want that responsibility or burden. I'd rather be in a conversation and kind of walk next to folks if they need it while they're walking down their path. And that's what I love about you. You're in that space. So I'm excited to talk about it.
And likewise, it's like there is no axe to grind here. No, at least I was going to say no message to deliver, which may not actually be true, but it's not the message you might be anticipating.
Right.
It's not about this is the right way.
Right. Right. So I guess I could start, I think, with what I found is just giving like a brief description of gift economy principles, or at least the principle. There are no principles, but like the way I practice.
Sure.
So many people are familiar with the term because of Burning Man. And Burning Man's gift economy is no money, and a week. It's contained within a week's time period, and it's based on gifting and a gift that you have, and that is not that's not what I use. I am not a person that says money's evil, and what I rather practice is that money, cash, is one currency of many. And if that's the case, when I look at our current system, money as one currency has had so much value given to it that it's devalued other forms of currency. And so I'll give you an example. If one form of currency is land, and say a tree is land, the value of a tree has been devalued because we've used money to value it. So I'm going to get kind of economy technical on you. Our GDP measures products. And so the value of a tree will not see its value until it is turned into a product, such as paper or a house. So if a tree is standing in a forest, in our system, it has no value because it has not been turned into a product. And so for me, the gift economy is where I've kind of just been experimenting for several years, is I've been experimenting with value. And that means I've explored my own personal worth and my own personal value, but it also means I just explore the designs and structures of things such as business, of things such as romance, and friendship, and the values, the systems we've created to create value around those things. So what I've done, I have so many examples of this, from Airbnb my house out and the way I practiced that to bring in some money, which is when I first kind of started, and then to running my business, or one of the businesses I have, by charging $0 with anybody that I work with. And I just ask them to decide the value themselves and pay it forward in whatever currency works for them. And we go through what currencies are. So a currency might be land, a currency might be materials. So it might be the milk from a cow. It might be the eggs. It might be the paper. Or a currency might be knowledge or ideas. And so we kind of go through some of what those currencies are. And so I've got to practice receiving. I'm a previous life teacher, so I'm a natural giver, to the point of martyrdom several times in my life. Raise your hand if that's you. It's a very common woman thing. And so I've gotten not only practice in receiving money, but also receiving other things, like somebody saying, looking at my life, listening to me without even words coming out, and saying, what you do is so important that when I watch you and see you in the morning, you have a coffee and a bagel every morning. And that's not healthy, and it's not sustainable for you. So I'm going to make you a vegan, high protein breakfast every day for a month, so that you can have more energy and have more energy to do the work that you were meant to do in this world. And so at practice in receiving that, one, being told you're unhealthy, and I'm like, no, I'm not. What's wrong with a coffee and a bagel? But receiving it and then realizing, oh, well, actually, a coffee and a bagel costs $7 a day. And it also costs me, and more so, it costs me an hour of time every day, when in my brain, my habit was that it saved me time from making breakfast, or like healthy breakfast. So then I got to practice receiving time back, receiving health, receiving actual food and nutrition. And so those types of experiments I've been doing for several years, and with sometimes flopping on their face. Sometime, and at some point getting to a point, part of the reason why I just got on the call at noon is I was on the phone call with somebody, and we were talking about basic needs, and she's kind of experimenting in a similar way as I am. And she was just like, I'm hitting rock bottom. And I was like, I've been there. I allowed myself to hit rock bottom because I needed to. And rock bottom meaning like my basic needs are just not taken care of. And it was because I wasn't asking for help. Mm-hmm. It was for a lot of reasons. But in the process of that, in the process of, I guess you could say, failing, I learned how to maybe have one foot in and one foot out, one foot in the system I want to be in, and one foot in the system that I was born into. So, and not make either wrong. Mm-hmm. 'Cause it's really easy to kind of go both feet in. And that's what I had done when I first started. I just put both feet in. I had to, and that's my nature. I'm Sagittarius and fire. And so I both feet in. And I got to the point where I just burned everything down. I burned everything down. And then I had to make the other side wrong the entire time I was doing it to feel a bit of comfort over on that other side. And I finally kind of came back to stasis, or balance of where I am, where I was born into. I know, my heart knows that there is this other way. I see historically, I was a history teacher too, so at least I have that gift. Historically, ways that were better for more, and we just let go of them. And so I'm returning to my roots while also being okay with where I am and how the tree has grown, and standing in, there's a little bit of both here. There's the tree can kind of go with the wind, as I experiment with this, and neither one has to be wrong. And I think that's a slippery slope. I think when people are thinking about the gift economy, they're thinking that there's no money. They're thinking that it's barter trade, that it's tit for tat, when it's not. It doesn't have to be, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So that, in a very roundabout way, because I didn't have time to take a breath and get centered before we started, is just kind of a synopsis of what I've been up to and how I've been up to it.
Great.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
And I'll chatter for a bit and let you take a breath.
Yep. Let's do it.
And I'll start by letting people know I've muted you all to the best of my control. Sometimes somebody slips under my radar, but I'm only doing that for the sake of managing background noise. Your voices are all welcome in this conversation. Absolutely. And there are at least 2 ways that I know of to join. The most reliable is to mouse over the bottom of your screen and you'll see a little icon that says participants, participants. And if you click on that, at the bottom of that, I think, is a place where you can raise your hand. Mm-hmm. And that will signal me on a magic dashboard. You can also do this, physically, and I might see you, but I don't always have everybody on my screen. The third way that comes to mind right now is you can unmute yourself by mousing over your own picture and clicking unmute, or by going to the lower left corner of your screen with your mouse, and you'll see a little microphone icon that you can unmute, and you can just freaking interrupt, speak up. So there's 3 ways. The fourth way, let's hope I don't get to 6, okay? The fourth way is to click on the chat icon, also appears at the bottom of your screen when you mouse over it, and say something in the chat. So at least 4 ways to get into the conversation, and please do feel welcome to do that. And Sue, on iPad, raise hand is under the more dots. And I think it's similar on the phone if you're on a different operating system. Thanks, Sue. So I thought I would chime in with my own context of how I arrived at this conversation.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I just kind of ran out of road with conventional ways of pricing my services. And I didn't know how to relate to that. At first, I didn't even realize how much thinking I had about what it meant that it didn't seem to work for me anymore. So, for example, I thought maybe it meant that I was feeling guilty about money. Maybe it meant that my receivability had shrunk. Maybe it meant that, maybe it meant all kinds of different things. Maybe it meant that I wasn't confident of the value I was delivering. Maybe it meant all these things. And there was a whole other category of maybe it means I won't be able to function in business. If I don't put prices on my services and significant prices, people won't value my work. If I don't put significant prices, the people who come to me won't value their work with me. So there's lots and lots of thinking. And so I went round in circles with that thinking for a few years, just kind of fumbling with my pricing. And one day I brought it to a coaching conversation. I was in a class training coaches, and one of the trainees coached me. And she did a brilliant job. I brought this question of fees. And I forget what she asked, but it was something like, what do you want? And I thought, well, I want people to pay what they want to pay. And I don't know why, and I don't need a justification. And it's like, maybe that was the question. Do you need a justification? And I started to play with what wondering about money in my business might look like if I wasn't preoccupied with my worries, my justifications, my theories, my ideas about morality, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, okay, screw it. I'm going to go to Pay What You Choose. It happened that I was about to go into a month of radiation for breast cancer, and which just created a kind of window for me. And I put it out there that people could sign up ad hoc for coaching and pay what they wanted. And one of the first things that I experienced was somebody paid me $20 for a session. And it was one of the most intriguing, exciting, engaging coaching sessions I'd ever had. So much for people only get what they pay for. It shook things up, but I was still not sure where to go or how to play. And in time, I came around to meet Nicole, and Nicole just helped continue to loosen up my thinking and give me permission, if that's something anybody can give you, but wake me up to the permission to make it up as I go. And to not need, it was the conversation with Nicole was the first one I had where I didn't feel like we were having a policy discussion. Mm. It's just like, from where I sit, the world doesn't actually need a new set of policies.
Yeah.
Or at least not a new set of conversations about policies. And you said something to me like, first you gave me some examples from your own experience, Nicole, but you also said something to me like, this doesn't have to be about capitalism or not capitalism. This can be about making up what capitalism looks like to you. Mm-hmm. And I just got this sense of, I don't have to get it right. I don't have to have a manifesto. I can just fiddle with it. And it really was thrilling.
Yeah.
The other thing that became apparent to me in our conversation that I just want to throw out that I'm playing with is this sense that whatever the economic system is, underneath it, we're all connected. It's like, sorry guys, but actually it is all connected. And that when I do something for you or you or you, I'm putting life energy, I'm putting value into the web of life.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in what shows up for us when we think about receiving from that web and paying back into that web. So it might come to me in the form of money or milk or flowers, and it might just go into the web in terms of paying it forward. Maybe you're walking the neighbor's dog or weeding the community center garden. And so that sense of there's a bigger web, there's something bigger going on than just one-on-one exchange captures. So
and transactions.
Transactions.
Which are virtually invincible now.
Yeah.
Almost, right? They're there. They're happening every second of the day, but they're invincible because they can be.
What do you mean by invincible?
They're coding. It's zeros and ones. So are there transactions that we don't even, we used to be able to transact and there was a symbol, which is cash, actual dollar bills.
Yeah.
And now we can get our paycheck our paycheck every 2 weeks, and it's just goes in, and maybe you get an email or you just trust that it's there.
Yeah.
And so almost all of those are invincible now. Mm-hmm. So, and so then we're not. Now I'm sitting in this question though too. It's like, if it's invincible, when it's time to transact, when say someone that is doing something different or is in needs something, what then do they have to do to get your attention? And what are they? They're almost fighting invincibility.
Invincibility or invisibility?
I don't know. Yeah, but it's a harder fight, and so then, for me, I can maybe sound like an activist, but I just some of the things that I've chosen to do, this is my form of activism. I don't stand on the picket line angry anymore, because I'm in action, and the action is asking these questions.
Yes.
And so I ask questions really high. I also worked in nonprofits for a long time, and asking, have even the nonprofits who are doing good work had to have to make their transactions invincible, like monthly subscription. And what is the cost of that? What is let's use economic terms. What is the opportunity cost of not even knowing? Like, you made the choice once for $20 to go in every month, and then but you don't have to make that choice again. What is the opportunity cost of not having to make that choice again? It just happens. What do we lose from that?
Right. And I notice when I take the ferry to Seattle, and there are a couple of guys that hang out by the walkway into downtown, homeless guys. And when I live on my debit card, I don't have the option to decide whether or not to give them $5.
Yeah.
I don't have $5 on me. And which is just a tiny illustration of what happens when money and transactions go into the background, where they become automatic, repetitive, in a way choiceless.
Yeah. And then when we don't have choice, I mean, we can keep going further, down. I will go down any rabbit hole and I go deep. So stop me. I have philosopher's blood in me. Is if we don't have choice, do we have freedom? Mm-hmm. Do we truly have freedom? Or has somebody chosen what freedom is for us? Yeah. And so I think that's what's guided my quest. Actually has always been I've just been a rebel. I've been a rebel my entire life. I don't know much about that. I know that that's just a part of me. And I first thought the rebellious nature was to find freedom. Mm-hmm. And now I realize through all these experiments that it's more just a sense of freedom than it is freedom at all. Because if I was truly free, I potentially would just be an anarchist. And I wouldn't be connected. I wouldn't be connected to my values. And when I want to be in community, I want to be in relationship with others. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that space, you have to compromise. And that's not freedom.
It's not freedom from. It may be freedom for, but it's not freedom from.
So it's getting, so the question, so I can keep going with this, but I just love your explorations and the freedom that you have found in this play. Mm-hmm. And I would love to hear more of since the last time we talked to what's been going on with that.
Yeah, great. I'm going to unmute Christy. Hey, Christy.
Hi.
Hi, Christy.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Nicole. I was really excited to be on this today, so I'm glad you are here. Molly, when you were talking about the web of life, and having watched you go through that period when you were wondering about fees, mm-hmm. And if I kind of think that I'm going to be taken care of no matter what I do, either way I go, if there's not like any wrong way kind of thing, just more going by the sense of what seems like the next right thing to do, mm-hmm. that I will be taken care of and provided for. Is that kind of the web of life that you're talking about?
Well, maybe, and I don't know. Because what I notice is that whenever I think about being taken care of, it's difficult to have a concept of taking care of without a theory of what taking care of looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing that's happened for me that I think has enabled me to play with this, and I'd love to hear from Nicole as well, is my convictions about what taking care of means have gotten kind of porous. Mm-hmm. And I also, full disclosure, I'm married. My husband brings home a baseline salary. It's, by many standards in my circles, it's small, but it's more than adequate for our means. So I have no day-to-day concern other than my own ability to incur debt for training and business. And I do have some responsibility fiscally in the household, but I just want to be transparent that there's a kind of safety net, and I don't know what might change. It actually occurs to me that without this safety net, one thing that could change is I would have even more freedom of what taking care of looks like, because I wouldn't have anybody else to worry about if taken care of looks like being a happy street bum. But I want to point that some of this and some of the freedom that I feel I have to explore this is that the way the web of life supports me doesn't need to look a particular way.
Right. Absolutely. And so to add to that, when I started, and I'm gonna, if I can, weave in some people in my networks that have similar stories. When I started these experiments and such, I had zero savings. I came from Silicon Valley. I grew up in Silicon Valley and on a teacher's salary. So I had $500 to my name to get out of that place. And get to a place where I could experiment with these values with the day-to-day not being such a pressure. It would be irresponsible to do it in a place such as Silicon Valley and the cost that it has there for basic needs. I'm single, and I, at that time, didn't have any dependents. Now I have a dog, and I am I caretake, but I would say she actually takes care of me, my adopted grandmother, in her house. And that might be an example, though, of the web of life. Is I actually, in this grand experiment of charging $0, I actually had a very different situation and was able to, in a sense, own a house with another person. And I didn't think that would ever happen. But I was lonely. So I had a need there of really wanting deep love in my life. I wanted that form of wealth. And it wasn't there. I was out doing and being good and doing a lot of great work. And I would come home to nothing, even though I live my life in community. And so I got a dog. So I got that dependent, right? But then I have this one woman in my life, and we go to breakfast every 2 weeks, just staying connected. And there's a much bigger story on our relationship. And one day she just said, she's 76, and she just said, I can't take care of the house and my animals and myself. I put myself last, and I'm getting worried. And we went to her house and looked around, and I said, you have an empty basement. And so now I moved in with her, and now my day-to-day need, where I don't have a husband, I don't have that. But I think what you were saying, Molly, is I then have the freedom to say, yeah, and I'm going to sell my house, because it actually became a burden to me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live for free financially, for currency wise, in the basement of someone. And there is no direct transaction. There's not I'm her caretaker. She's not at a physical level of caretaking need, but it's family level. Mm-hmm. And both now this deep need to have love at a familial level in our lives is now taken care of. And that's a web. And that's not the normal way you get that. Exactly. In my world, I'm going to be 40 soon, and I should be married and have kids. And that should be filled in that way. And so that's the web. But there's something about being in community. And I think the kind of maybe more practical, technical kind of, or tangible ways to think about it is, instead of needs and wants, which is actually quite hard to ascertain because they change moment to moment. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to say, is that a need or a want, right? Do I really need that scone over there? Or can I get away with just eating a hard-boiled egg every day? So those questions are kind of hard to sit with, and they are hard for you to do anything if you're asking them constantly. Instead, kind of for me, what has freed me up in the gift economy sense is, if I believe that there are more than one form of wealth, if there's many forms of currencies, and I'm able to kind of do the inner spiritual work to accept any form of those currencies at the same value, or I get to choose the value of those things. Then my responsibility in this system is to give. And so if I have an expectation, or if that my needs will be taken care of, if I have the faith, if I want to have faith in that, then I have to be a part of that system too. Mm-hmm. And so the kind of the mantra that I've been playing with is that when I'm abundant in something, I give it away. So every year for the past actually it's ended up being intentionally for the last 3 years, I've lived on less than $25,000. And I've given more money away in the last 3 years than I have in my entire life. Because it comes to me, and when there's an abundance of it, it goes out. And some people are like, that's not how capitalism works, right? Like you got to save. To have faith and trust in your retirement and later in life, you got to save. And, but then that doesn't mean, I do. I have faith and trust that will come back to me when it needs to. And it has in different ways. So I give away the things that I'm abundant in. I'm also really abundant in time. I'm abundant in friendship. I'm a great listener. I was a teacher. I'm a great listener. Sometimes I think I'm abundant in knowledge. I think that's like whatever. I just came back from Maui, and I was I was surrounded by the abundance of mangoes because it's mango season. And so and flowers. And so I would pick the flowers up off the ground and I would give them a second life. So the question now is not what I need or want. The question now is, what am I abundant in, and what is abundance for me right now? And I add right now. And then what am I sufficient in? And I keep that. It stays with me. And then, and this is the big one for us givers / potential martyrs, is what am I deficient in right now? And how can I ask for help? And if we're all kind of moving in that space, that web for me becomes something more tangible and more obvious, rather than just having the faith that it's going to be there when we land. And for me, it becomes a trampoline. It's really bouncy. And so you're not just falling flat on the web and sticking to it like a fly.
Yeah.
It's not a spider web, or it's not like a cement web. So it's kind of how I have found the balance to ask, but those are the questions that I've sat with. And that has helped me to give in a way that, actually it has helped me just personally accept the way that I give, because society tells me I should be giving money, and that's of more value. And I've never had money to give. So I've always given by making an extra sandwich when I'm making lunch, and trusting that there will be somebody that needs it along my way, if it's a coworker or a homeless person. And it also has helped me to stabilize or be one with more people. And see them as rich. I can see that. I have one of my dearest friends is homeless most of the year, and he is so rich in ideas. I mean, it's when I'm stopped, when I don't have, like, we all going to go through those funks when I'm kind of in a valley. He's the friend I go to, because he will dream so big. He is so rich in that. And it's allowed me to value that at the same level as if I went to a friend of mine that has the most money, who might be able to take care of a bill. And so it's helped me to actually, I guess, value the different parts of the web in an more equal way. Does that help, Christy? Did that visualize it a little bit more?
Let me see. I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All of it. Good job.
It does strike me that there's something here about what we mean when we say we trust.
Yeah.
And there's in kind of new agey circles, I see the tendency to want to make trust a magical thinking. irresponsible act where trust is coupled with my fantasy of the Ferrari and the beach and the whatever else, and my lack of initiative and effort to do anything to make it happen. Except that I'm going to put a lot of thinking about it.
Right.
And abundant thinking is thinking about the Ferrari I don't have rather than thinking about the flowers on the ground that are blowing my freaking mind, and they're free. Oh my God, go figure.
Yeah.
So I think one of the ways that this conversation, for those in this group and others watching the replay who follow the three principles with me, crosses over, is we're tapping into that understanding that there actually is something, some intelligence, energy, life force that's operating in the world, and that it gives rise to, or that it's an infinite resource that we can tap. But if you don't tap it, if you don't reach into the well, you're not going to pull up any water.
Right.
And this, for me, is another way of reaching into the well.
Right. And I think there's for me, it's allowed me to be more present and not always have to be growing. I think a lot of our system is designed to be perpetually growing. And when I'm in circles where people are talking about abundance and worth, it hits me in a really, it doesn't sit well with me, because I see abundance being understood as if that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that, for me, that then takes me out of the present and puts me, as my boyfriend would say, like, you're future tripping. It's not future trip. It puts me in the future of, and you do need that vision. You do need those goals, but it's as if you don't have it now.
Yeah.
And there is always something that we are abundant in. And when I first started doing this, there were so many things I had to unlearn. And one of which was to not draw an equation, to be okay with kind of going all over the place, because everybody else is drawing an equation, and then people copy the equation. They don't sit with, well, what is my equation?
Yeah.
And so I used to go into entrepreneurial settings, speaker settings, and I would end up in fights with the guys that were sitting next to me and their ways of business and growing abundance. And for them, it's just profit. We're growing profit, nonstop profit. And I finally kind of stepped away from that and said, well, how, I don't want to not be in those spaces, because then I'm not in community. But I wasn't trusting myself to allow to be a good teacher, really. And which is what I am. And instead of being a speaker, I really don't want to be. It didn't feel right to tell people, because people were hearing it in a different. People hear abundant. This is how to create the abundance.
Yeah, like that's
right.
Your job.
Like they
right.
just. And so I sat with that. I sat in that question, like, what is an experiment? How that I can try? What are experiments I can try out to do it a little differently? And so now I go in and I share a little bit of my story. And I just ask the audience, and same for you all too, is if any part of the system that you are in, or systems that you are in, doesn't work, hasn't worked for you, what is one thing, no matter how small it is, that you can do differently? And then just do it and see what happens. And it might not work for you. So for example, for me, my experiments, and Molly, I think I told you this too, my experiments, I hold a lot of fear in relationships. There's a lot of stuff that I got to work through for that. And so these type of experiments were not working in relationships at all. And they were driving me into depression and all this stuff. But that's where I started. And then I said, okay, so I was just kind of watching myself face, and I made a decision that as I go through this, my experiments are actually going to be in business. I have almost, it's uncanny how little fear I have in that space of my life. So that's where I run my experiments, to the point where 5 years later, I'm able to now run those experiments in relationships. In a fairly new relationship too. Right? The first time that I can actually sit in these conversations and be okay, and then like actually experiment with another person next to you. That's a lot of the criticism I get is, well, it's great that you can do that. You don't have any dependence. You have the freedom to do it. And it's like, yeah, that was a blessing for me. And how great that I get to continue those experiments as I continue to be further in community and live further in relationship, deeper in relationship. And that's fun, but it's hard. And a lot of people don't come with that. A lot of people will start with in relationship. You gotta change, and that's hard. And, communication is key. But it is possible. So then so the other thing with that is like, just start small, start really small. It could be as small as when you make breakfast in the morning, make extra and just see who needs it during the day. You don't have to make it mean that, that it has to go to the homeless. It could be someone that maybe forgets it at your workplace. Mm-hmm. When you go to get your coffee, maybe you go to maybe you go an extra mile, or half a mile to get to mom and pop instead of Starbucks, and you pay forward one coffee no matter who's behind you. It's kind of it's like no strings attached giving. Practice that, like no strings attached. How can I give with no strings attached? Because that will then help you receive without feeling like you have to transact back. And then trust the system, and then you're like, well, wow, okay, people did give to me, even though I gave, and then I got it back somewhere else. And then it kind of just helps the pot stir a little bit more. Yeah.
And while you're sharing specific strategies, and some people may be hearing those and going, yeah, I want to try that. If you're hearing those and going, ick, all mm-hmm. that means is that's not the specific.
That's not the strategy for you. Yeah.
A deeper truth here, which is you can play with it.
Yeah.
It calls to you. And what I hear you, and please correct me if I'm not getting this accurately, Nicole, I hear you pointing again and again to abundance as something we get a feel for, an eye for, that we have. Mm-hmm. Not that it's always there, not as a belief system, but as an awareness. And as we become more and more aware of what's available and start playing with the possibility that it's valuable.
Yeah. And that's hard. In the current system we're in, it is hard. It is uncomfortable, especially when suddenly, like you become very aware when the things that you are abundant in do not have cash value. So to sit with that, and that's where community comes in, right? Like that's where being a friend, having those people close to you that says you are valuable, and it actually doesn't matter what you have. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs that. And that sometimes though, that's why when you're looking, you might say, yeah, I'm abundant, I'm giving it away. And I can see that society hasn't valued it with money, but this is what I have right now to give away. I have my time. I have my friendship. I have an extra room in my house. I have extra clothes, just there's so many things that you could be abundant in. But I'm lacking in friendship. I'm lacking in that. I've had to ask for that. I've had to tell specific friends, I need you to tell me every single time we talk that I am worthy of even living. And because I need to hear it. I have to hear it. And because I've actually taken myself out of a system that tells me that through money.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to have it come in somewhere. If not, I'm going to be left to my own thoughts. And that's not a pretty place. You can see some of my art. It's not pretty. And sometimes though, there's not a friend there. And that's where then I go and I ask the question of artists and poets. And I can hear it in that, or I ask that question as I am walking, like, those practices, those tools, those of balance. The walking really has been the saving grace for me. It always has been, but I've placed more value on it, and what I get back from a walk is, especially when I'm in the nature of things, actually that's not true, to the point now where I can walk in the middle of the biggest city in the world, and I can see abundance everywhere, and I can and then I trust it, and I'm reminded of it when I'm in that little hole of the world, kind of their way, the way of our world is kind of pounding. But to get back to what you're saying, exactly that. So for a long time, I didn't share my stories. I didn't share these my own experiments, because I felt responsible for people just taking them and then replicating them. And that's not it. It's just really not it.
Right.
But it is irresponsible of me not to share my stories, because if I can share them in such a way where they just sit, they just land, they plant a seed, and that seed might be burst out 20 years later with someone. And I ask people to please share your stories. That is the biggest way one could pay forward anything for me, is when they experiment, to share their story, because that then makes the fabric of that, the fabric stronger.
Yeah.
And
when you share your story, I experience it like when an artist shares a piece of art, it doesn't inspire me to go out and paint that painting,
right,
but it inspires me to be artful in whatever way. It reminds me that, oh my God, artistry is available. Expression is valuable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I would love to hear from folks, like some things that first pop up, questions and or thoughts on experiments.
Yeah.
That people are, and or I have so many from deep level systems in a business, systems in my life, and personal ways of doing. I have so many examples I could share that I'm happy to, but I want to hear some, and I know too, people probably, one thing I learned too was I was already doing a lot of these things. I just had not placed value on them.
Yeah.
So that might be fun to share too, or things that you think might be it. And just, we can go through that conversation.
Perfect. All right. Who would like to ask a question, share a story, or just something's cooking and you're not sure how it's relevant, but it's bubbling there? Would love to hear it. You know, I have a friend, Bill Cumming, who said something to me once that has just so resonated. He says, we can never know when the most important conversation in the world is taking place. And somehow in this moment, that to me connects with a deep principle here, that we can't know when deep and profound and incredible value is being created or exchanged. And it's been less for me about figuring out or coming up with ways to create or exchange value, and more about removing the blinders that have kept me from noticing it or wondering about it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And getting it, it's getting that present moment and just present with your people.
Yeah. And not needing to get it right. Like,
Right.
it's such a narrative in business that if you struggle with pricing your work, there, maybe 3 or 5 things that are wrong with you that we can fix if you do enough work.
Oh gosh.
Like, what if there's nothing wrong with you? What if you just kind of want to do it differently?
Yeah. And there's a level of responsibility here, because I think a lot of people will say, oh, okay, yeah, that's your heart. Like the thing that's wrong with you when you say that is, well, your heart's irresponsible, and you're right. The Gandhian principle is head, hand, heart. So, and really it's heart first. For me, it's heart first, my hands then experience it and learn, and is this something I can trust? And then my head figures it out.
Yeah.
So there is a level, there's responsibility built into that structure.
Yeah.
But your heart, like trusting your heart to lead that first.
Yeah. Trust that there might be something there for you, and then experiment, play with it, try things.
Right. That's the hands. And then your brain says, okay, how then can we make this into a container? How then can we allow things to emerge while still designing for it to continue?
Yeah.
So,
and you mentioned having, a leg or a foot in 2 different worlds or economies.
Yeah.
I want to say just a little bit more about what that looks like. I think that might be helpful.
Yeah. So I used to say I don't have a business plan, but I do. And it's 500 years. It's a sequoia. I don't even call it 500 years. I don't. But my business plan is the age of a sequoia tree. So and so the design principles in that is, I'm designing for me to be gone. I am designing for a legacy, but I'm also okay if the tree falls over. Trees might fall over.
Yeah.
I was
in nursery logs are good.
Yeah. And I was in the 89 earthquake. There's some things in my life that I'm realizing lately, like that really impacted my ability to trust this in my adult life. But I was a mile from the epicenter of the 89 earthquake in California, in San Francisco. And I saw trees be shaken over and their roots. I was in the forest on a hike. So I know that they can fall, I guess you could say. So I can trust, and that they then have a purpose when they fell, that their purpose is not done. So, but in the business plan, it is, I'm building for something bigger than myself. If you look at a lot of nonprofits, the person who starts it, they start it and they build it around their life.
Yes.
And so they're not actually building it to build beyond themselves. And then that's where a lot of nonprofits fail. And or when that new person comes in, they see such a mission shift that it's not recognizable. So I'm building stuff to be so rooted in the ground that it can build beyond me at any point in time. It could be when I die. It could be tomorrow. So, and that takes a lot of inner work too. So that then intertwines. My business plan is that I'm okay with intertwining my own inner journey. I don't have that work and life separation. Right. There is a personal side to me, right? But my inner journey is part of this business, and I'm gonna design for that. I'm gonna design for the people in my community to also be on their inner journey wherever they are, and we're gonna be okay with that. And that collectively we will just keep growing at the pace of a sequoia tree, which is not what the world grows at. It grows more at the pace of possibly weeds, which is not bad. There's still function for weeds too, right? So that's one design. The other design is I literally don't charge anything, and I charge $0. I'm not giving anything away for free. That's one of those mantras too. Like if you're not charging, or if you're undercharging, you're devaluing yourself. That's what's wrong with you. It's a worth issue. It's not for me. It's it's not free, but it's freely given. I left part of the so speaking of worth, it's not a worth issue because my ego is about to burst. I'm going to say I was a damn good teacher. I should be a teacher. I should be in the teaching system, but I couldn't do it. The bells, just there's something in me. Like I am a nature girl. I gotta kind of move, and the current system is bell and bell, and it was too contained, and my creativity went down, and it's hard for me to be in a structured work environment. So I built my company so that I have a lot of time, an abundance of time to give. That is my product, is time. And other products might come. I might say, yeah, I can build out your website if I barely know how, but if you need it, I'll do it. Or yeah, I can, I'll make this connection. I see a connection, but the main product I have is time. It's not some coaching package. It's just time. And I give it freely and trust that it will come back to me. And it has. And I'm from Silicon Valley. The system in Silicon Valley and tech is based on debt. Right? You build something so that it becomes so valuable that somebody buys it or loans you money until you make it back to give it back. It's a system built on debt. So one of my design principles is to not design anything on debt, to just design do what I have and give what I have an abundance of. And so sometimes I don't have an abundance of time, or I don't have an abundance of, say, friendship. And so I can be okay with from where I just came from, which was 6 weeks, I guess you could say, off from that to write a book and to write some of these stories down. But which then opened up the time for me to fall in love. And so when you start experimenting, all of a sudden those things that seem like they are serendipitous and luck, all of a sudden you start to see the actual fact that you see the individual. For those of you that sew, right? Like you can see when you not weave. I can't remember it, but like there's a certain type, you can see the individual lines. Yeah. And directly see it, but again, the practice is to give freely.
You see the warp and the weft.
And if you start to, the trick is that you then want to, it's comfortable, right? So you want to sit there, and there's no sitting. You continue to give, but there's so much happiness that the wealth then that you are creating is that, like for me, I'm not tired anymore. It's not even tired. It's just, there's a weight that is no longer, I don't have to hold it. I can kind of be on it and moving with it. I can respond instead of react to the things that are not great in my life. And that's another trap too, is people are like, oh, you're so happy all the time. And they, let's keep it up there. I'm like, no, I'm not happy all the time.
Yeah.
Life still happens. Cancer still comes. And car, like yesterday I was driving back into Denver, and a oil truck exploded in front of me. And I'm like, well, like that still happens. And I then can respond though, instead of react. Yeah. and be able to choose some of these things at a deeper level. And that's by design. That really is design, because I've said in my business though, and it's seeped into my life, is tree. It's a tree. It's a sequoia tree. It's not even, it's not an oak tree. It's not a, I've sequoia trees. Those are my trees. And they're, if you go and sit underneath them, it's just such a beautiful thing. But that's a reminder. It's slow. And that's what works for me. Others are fast. They're fast growing trees. Mm-hmm. And that's great. So Chris, I just saw Christy's chat of an example of somebody where somebody gave me money. So goodness. So I haven't run any numbers. I like the data that I still collect data. But in the past 3 years, it's been, I've had these business structures. I've had the business for 5 years. But 3 years where I've said $0, and you decide the currency and pay it forward. About a third of people pay it back to me. And of that third, a third of them pay with money. And part of what I do is sit with a lot of people and sit with what is wealth? What are those currencies for you? What are you abundant in? And I've actually said no. Probably more often. I've said no to money because I could sense that people were just giving money because that's what they knew to do. And I knew that they were not abundant in it. And so that's kind of my righteousness maybe, or my activism. It is like, no, I'm going to actually say no to this. And then, but the times where money does come in, let's see if I can find the most recent example. It's funny because there is I keep a log of all the currency that comes in, and it's gotten to the point where because I give with no strings attached, it's not such a tit for tat transaction. So sometimes I could have worked with someone and we did a lot of work in December together. Like they were launching something, some nonprofit. So the business that I have, I work with people's dreams. And so I help people just dream with them, especially dreams that would do a lot of good in the world. And so they might be launching a nonprofit. I have one woman that walks the world. I have other people starting businesses. I have some people writing books. I have some people, one friend is just a friend that got back from Standing Rock. I just dream with them. And so I've had people that I worked with years ago, and all of a sudden one day they've got an extra $100 and it shows up in my PayPal account. So it's, if I expect to give, then I have to and no strings attached, then that money, then it's actually doing a disservice if I attach it to something that I gave with them.
Yeah.
And then I've had some people that I've done no work with who have said that treat me sort of like a nonprofit. But again, I'm a teacher. My friends are teachers. My friends are not, big wigs. My circles are not in that space. But I've had a friend that just says, I don't have the courage to do what you do. So I made an agreement with him that if I got to a point where my basic needs wouldn't be taken care of, that I have to ask him for help. But on my end, I said, but you have to, if you don't have it when I ask, you have to say, I don't have it.
Yeah.
And so we kind of, in our friendship, went through that inner journey together. And I've asked that person, I think twice in the past 5 years, and one time he had it and one time he didn't. And then there's been one other time where he just said, I got extra and here it is. So that's money wise, but I've got just as many examples with other forms of currency, with the food, like my friends, for me, I'm still processing this, but just my friends threw me a surprise crowdfunding campaign for my birthday, because they knew they actually more noticed that I was being crankier than normal, and my like inner circle of friends, I was actually being really cranky, and they were, it was like I had gotten to capacity with the dreams that I was holding and stories that I had. And so they reached out to a lot of my networks and just said, hey, we really want to give back to her and give her some time and space to write a book. And so they raised a couple $1,000 and surprised me for my birthday. And so that's where I just came back from, was 6 weeks in Maui to spend that time. And I was crying every day in gratitude that was granted to me. It was a gift. So, and then I had a friend that came on that trip too, and she was so great because she knew I was there to write, and she was just like so excited to play house, and she would make breakfast, and so we were like practicing gifting to each other in that space. Like, what are we abundant in today? And like I would always bring back a flower and for my walks, and so it just doesn't stop though. Like this doesn't. There is no end goal here. It's a constant system.
Yeah. Christy, do you have your hand up?
I do. So I have I was in a restaurant, and a owner has an employee, and she introduced me to her and is gifting this employee a life coaching session with me. And so I'm going to leave this call and go over there. And I just wondered, do you mention anything about fees at all? Do you just say you give what you want, or do you just not mention anything and you just see where it goes? I'm not really sure. My only example of it is Molly. And then one time I was in San Francisco, that a restaurant was, you just paid whatever you thought the lunch was worth.
Yeah.
So I've only had 2 experiences of being on the end of somebody doing it to me. I have no experience. I just give everything away free because I just don't know how to do it any other way.
Right.
But I also have a safety net.
Right.
And so you've got me thinking with this new person today, not really asking you the how-to. I'm just curious of what, you know what I mean? I'm not asking for a prescription, just more a description of to handle it, or anybody that's in the audience too.
Yeah. I would just say sit with, before you go, just kind of sit with what feels good. What might be one thing you can do that's different? Like if you have the tendency to just give away and you just don't mention anything, maybe the edge might be to just mention that I'm giving, I give away freely, but you get to choose the value for you. And that conversation might be with the business owner, not with the person that is being.
Right. It's with the owner. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't want to, you do have a safety net, but you don't want to put a strain on it. Right. So you do have needs. And so when we don't talk about it, we're limiting the ability to receive. And so the business owner might say, you can come in here and eat for free anytime you want. You never know. Like you're actually leaving some fruit on the table, or fruit on the tree, if you don't say anything. And there are I know people in the world, but they are incredibly spiritual. Like they are more on the spiritual side that do that. They don't say anything. It's like they give and they go. They're on pilgrimage and constant. But for you, it maybe just sit with what is the next thing I could say, and then take a step back and do the same thing once you get back. Just sit with, how did that feel? How would I say it differently? It took me a solid year to translate the language of my heart to make any sense to other. literally. And still to this day, if I'm not, you'll know when I'm not meditating. Like I just drove 10 hours yesterday. I was on a phone call right before here. I had breakfast with my grandma. I didn't get to meditate today. So I'm sure it's not as clear as it could be, the language of my heart. So, but that's part of the experiment is, is to do something and then listen. What does your heart say? Did you notice a way you could do it differently? Did a lot of fear come up? And then I would say one thing, reach out to the people here and use, I'm sure there are people here that would be happy to spend 5 minutes to just listen to your reflection and reflect back to you. That is an abundant, like that's something we all have, is that abundance to listen to each other. So
what I hear you saying is since I don't usually mention anything,
yeah,
if I experiment and play with it, if nothing more than just saying to this that I did the session for free.
Yeah. If you're not mentioning anything, mention something.
Okay.
Right. And then just see, and then like it's a small. I think for me, the one thing that has helped me, because I come from Silicon Valley, one of the things that I had to unlearn is not to go big. Right? I was taught to go big or go home. So now I tell myself, smallest common denominator. What is I sit with what is the smallest common denominator of an experiment right now? And cull it down. So for me, it would be just say something.
And that's the hands part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Yeah. Have fun. I can't wait to hear. Please, Molly, I don't know what's a good way to stay connected, and like to share some of this stuff, share that story, share what happened, right? You might hit up against a fear you didn't even know was there. It might be so easy that tomorrow you change your entire business. Who knows? But it's going to be fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. You can share comments and experiences and questions on the webpage that got you here, would be one way. There's also a link on that page to Nicole's site, wilddreamwalks.com, so you could connect with her directly.
Yeah.
Nicole's website for me is an interesting place to visit because it's an example of an evolving experiment.
Yes. I was about to put my disclaimer of I haven't touched that thing in a year and a half and I haven't had to.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's it. Yeah. Go ahead, Mom. Sorry.
So take a look at her site and recognize the beauty of being able to have it all be a work in progress.
Right.
Judy has a question in the chat. I'd love to volunteer more, but struggle because although happy to give my time where I live, it means it costs a lot for the travel.
Right. I had that same experience. And I had to look at, why am I volunteering? Is it because I have the time, or am I volunteering because I want community connection? And I, at the time, I was actually doing a lot of volunteering online. And if that calls to you, I have a list. In fact, I just got an email of someone that was needing some help. And I don't think I have the time to give to it, so I can direct you in that way. But I was volunteering because I wanted community connection, in-person connection. And that actually was why I started a weekly walk. It sounds like maybe you're in a rural area. So, maybe you're just giving you're volunteering your time to the land. So that's you're going to explore worth there, right? Like this society has said there is a way to volunteer and a group of people to volunteer to. And I would just say the experiment might be, where can you, rather than volunteering your time, where can you be of service with where you are? And it might be planting trees. It might be cleaning up trash. It might be online. And it might be to where you live and who you live with. And that would be, for me, of equal value and worth than being at the Red Cross, helping people give blood, or at a shelter and feeding the homeless. You might, and in between might even be creating a craft. I have a really good friend in North Carolina, Becky, who is a kind of a soul sister in this place. And she might, no, I don't think she's on here, but I was going to say, I know she'll watch it. Hi, Becky. And she creates crafts. She is such an expressive, creative person. She creates crafts, and she's constantly mailing them out. But at a time, she created an abundance of them, and then once a month goes out and distributes them. Mm-hmm. I have a couple friends that do the same. They'll make food consistently over a month, like food that it preserves itself, and then we'll go and distribute it when they have that time and that money. For you, it would be the money to get to it, instead of it being consistent. It's because then you can put that love and that you can take your time creating that gift that you would like to give. There's a little bit difference between creating a gift and being of service. Being of service is just showing up and looking around and asking a question, where is there a deficiency, and do I have an abundance to fill it? There's a difference with, I've got a creative expression. I guess that creativity is the abundance, and I want to give it out, and then you just give it, and people may or may not need it.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Right. But that's a great question to kind of sit in, because you'll notice there's some things to unlearn about the way we think volunteering.
Exactly. And there's some eyes to open. What comes to mind is a couple weeks ago, I was at the post office. And even though I also have an abundance of time, I have a habit of living as if I've got places to go and things to go do.
Me too.
And a young man was coming out of the convenience store next to the post office with lots of bags. And I said, "Can I help you carry those?" And he said, yes. Mm-hmm. And I walked him up the hill, and we didn't become best friends. I didn't impose myself on him as his savior. We just, walked a few blocks, and that was it.
Yeah.
I wrapped gifts for the Suquamish Elementary grade school Christmas party.
Yeah.
They're just surprising places where you can notice an opportunity to say yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of, I feel like I have a friend that was in a very similar situation. She actually has she had a very different situation. She literally is agoraphobic. She cannot leave her house. She is deathly scared. But she creates physical problems, the anxiety from that. And that's her path, but she is so resilient and so tenacious. She then said, she just sent an email to her friends. How can I be of service to you within these parameters? Mm. And so I know for her, like I oftentimes, I love writing, except for I'm on calls like this a lot where there's beautiful stories that come. And if I'm like Molly, I feel like I'm almost kind of speeding around. If I really was of gifting service, I might transcribe it. But I just don't. And then it also takes me forever to do it. So just this past week, I asked her if she could help me transcribe a really amazing phone call that I had with someone in India. And that was it was such a huge contribution to us. And then she then is connected to that phone call and is seeding it. It's a way for the community to come together. But I wouldn't have known that was a resource that I had if she had not sent that email out 2 years ago, almost now. So, so that's another way of making that system work is when you have a deficiency, so that's a deficiency in idea, asking for help.
Great. I love how you broke that down.
Yeah, it takes a minute sometimes. That's, I think, an example of when you have one, for me, and this is where my edges are, when I have one foot in and one foot in one and one foot in another, my language goes between both, and it can get really, I notice it, I can feel it. And so there are often times my spiritual practices or my just practices has become, I need time to be all in one. And I need time to be all in the other, or I will forget it. And then there's other things that happen there too. Or it gets sloppy. It just feels off, right? Like, so there are practices to personal practices. And I think sometimes we forget that of what do I need to do things differently? How can I take care of myself in this? Because new things will come up, and it is self-care. There's a lot of that out there. But it's a deeper level of listening to yourself, and then following through on that. I think a lot of time I have that practice of putting all of this, giving to others first. So these experiments will be mirrors for yourself that can sometimes be hard to handle. And that's why that inner circle, those close friends are, to really cultivate that as a place to land sometimes. So yeah, that's something like too, like this new boyfriend, that was one of the first things I said, is like, I need a tree. Like, this is, it's clear to me, I need a tree. I mean, I'm out flying all the time. I need a tree. And he got it and was like, okay. Right. And that created that then experiment to see, okay, is he going to be a sequoia tree? Is he going to be an oak tree? I don't know. We'll see. But there's a tree there, but I had to ask for it. And oftentimes I'll ask, and they'll be like, tree, I don't know what a tree means. So then that helps me to then move on. Because the language, that's part of the experiment, listening for the reactions of the language that people have to the language that you have, because it's the language of your heart that will come out. And that's different than the language of our head. It's very, very different.
And another way we might play with that, Judy, is we just notice when we're running into the limits of the head.
Yeah.
And start wondering. I actually had a conversation with a client this morning where we were exploring the difference between, I don't know how to X, I don't know how that will work, and I wonder how that might work. Mm-hmm. Or I wonder what could fulfill that need. And there's a playfulness and an openness, and asking other people is a way to access that openness beyond the personal mind.
Mm-hmm. And in your heart's a muscle too. So it's actually, just think about how often we exercise our thoughts. Mm-hmm. They're so strong sometimes that we don't even know their strength. And so it's finding those places to exercise the muscle of your heart.
Yeah.
And so that it's not stronger than your thoughts, but it has strength. And it's not atrophied. Right. Same with your hands too. Physical. For me, that's part of the personal journey too. Is, gosh, I used to be such an artist as a young kid, but I had a solid break until probably 3 years ago. No art, no poetry, nothing. And no physical, like I would walk, but not physical. So now it's like the expression of my body is huge. And when I can, I pole dance, because it's the freest way for my body to express itself. And I practice it being in the lines, because I am such like the free bird that my art, I try to draw. I draw letters, because there is lines, and it's the exercising of that expression, that there is benefit to linear, because I don't want to do either. That's the practice there. So you start to notice and put the value on, why is coloring such a huge deal right now? it is this meditative practice. But for me, I was like, I don't want to color it within the lines. I actually want to be the one that creates them. And so then I started gifting out these. I have one in front of me. I gift out these things. I'm a 40-year-old gifting coloring pages to my friends' kids. And it is such a joy to do that because I'm actually getting a lot from practicing doing these lines.
Perfect.
It's reminding me to be that it's okay to be in a linear space.
What fun.
Yeah.
What fun. It's just another example, an illustration of the infinite ways that we can make this up.
Right.
And that we are always making it up. And
yeah, we really are.
Coloring within the lines. We're coloring within made up lines. And if that's not feeling good, it's okay to play with it.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, once again, your website and how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. I'm pretty sure all my, I'm wondering, I'm going to go check to see and hope that my contact information is on the website, but it's wilddreamwalks.com. My other business that we didn't talk about is, I know for a fact my information is on there because my co-op members make sure they keep me in line, is walktoconnect.com.
And that's with the numeral 2, right?
Yeah, numeral 2. And that's a whole nother experiment too, is in community, is building a business in a co-op structure. So, and I am happy. I've actually never marketed anything. It's all been serendipitous, from a Lyft driver to a person that helped me at Comcast, to people saying, I heard you on that, or you need to talk to that person. So it's, reach out and say hello and let serendipity take its course. And if you're experimenting and you just want 5 minutes, I'm happy. I have that. I really do. So,
lovely. Nicole, thank you so much. This has been a real treat. I'm so thrilled. I followed your Hawaii adventures on Facebook. And I just kept going, oh yeah, right? Oh, falling in love. Well, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest, I really was like, I'm gonna accept that I am living a life of service, and that means I was about to really literally draw up like a nun's prescription of like, this is the life of celibacy and this, and it's like, but that's not my path. And it came by shifting some things, shifting my time and space. Like, I value love so much. I say that to a lot of I know we're at time, but I say this to a lot of women because, love is something for us. And I have a lot of friends that get really, really in dating, get really jaded. And I'm kind of just like, one, we live with 7.9 billion people in the world, and there's an abundance of other people. And you might just value the place that you live more if you're not willing to, if you're not willing to kind of move to someplace else. Like I was valuing San Francisco more. Moving to Denver allowed me to have the trust in myself because I didn't have such a limitation on my needs. And then going to Maui, all of a sudden, it was there. And manage how that works out. But it's really exciting.
Really?
I'm in the blushing stage.
Yeah, that's great. It's been 42 years and I'm still in the blushing stage.
Yay!
So. I will get the replay up, guys. Feel free to share this with your friends and networks. And thank you, everyone, for showing up and contributing. And thanks again, Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely. Have wonderful days, everybody. And please share your stories.
Yes, we'll gather stories.
Yeah.
Bye, all.